That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun crested the horizon over Joint Base Andrews, casting long shadows across the dew-kissed tarmac. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at attention in the pre-dawn chill, her boots planted firmly on the concrete, the faint scent of jet fuel lingering in the air. Her uniform, crisp with starched creases, bore the insignia of the 101st Airborne Division's K9 unit, a silver dog tag etched with her rank and the words "Loyalty Unyielding." Beside her, Sergeant Rex, a sleek German shepherd with a coat the color of desert sand, sat rigid, his ears perked, dark eyes scanning the assembly line of handlers and their partners. The base hummed with the disciplined rhythm of morning muster. Sergeants barked orders in clipped tones, their voices echoing off the low-slung barracks. "Fall in! Eyes front!" Footsteps thudded in unison as 24 soldiers and their dogs formed ranks, the metallic click of leashes and the soft pant of breath the only sounds breaking the silence. Elena's hand rested lightly on Rex's harness, feeling the steady rise and fall of his flank. They'd been partnered for 3 years, through deployments in the dust-choked valleys of Afghanistan and the humid patrols of Southeast Asia. Rex wasn't just a dog, he was her shadow, her instincts made flesh, trained to detect explosives, narcotics, and the subtle shifts in human tension that no machine could sense. Major Harlan Grant, the unit commander, strode to the front, his polished boots striking the ground like drumbeats. A veteran of 2 tours in Iraq, Grant was all sharp angles and unyielding posture, his face weathered by years under the sun. "This is not a game," he announced, his voice carrying over the ranks. "Our mission is precision, detection, neutralization of threats before they materialize. You follow protocol, or you endanger the team." His gaze swept the line, lingering on Elena for a fraction longer than necessary. She met it without flinching, her expression a mask of professional calm. Whispers had circulated about her lately, rumors of a commendation for a find in Kabul that saved a convoy, but also questions about her methods. Too independent, some said, too willing to trust the dog's read over a superior's call. The training exercise began, as it always did, a simulated perimeter sweep. Handlers paired off, directing their dogs through mock checkpoints lined with concealed scents, traces of C4, Semtex, the acrid bite of black powder. Rex moved with Elena in sync, his nose low to the ground, tail a straight line of focus. The air grew warmer as the sun climbed, carrying the tang of damp earth from the nearby fields. Elena's radio crackled softly in her ear. "Vasquez, advance to Sector 3, confirm no contacts." She keyed the mic. "Copy, advancing." They reached the mock warehouse, a squat structure of corrugated metal that mimicked forward operating bases. Inside, the light filtered through high slits, casting striped shadows on the concrete floor. Rex tensed suddenly, his body going still, a low rumble building in his throat. Elena knelt beside him, her gloved hand on his collar. "Easy, boy. What do you have?" The dog pawed at a crate in the corner, marked with standard shipping labels, nothing out of the ordinary. But Rex's training was impeccable. False positives were rare. Sergeant Mills, Elena's second-in-command for the drill, approached from the far side. A burly man with a buzz cut and a perpetual scowl, Mills had clashed with her before, dismissing her reliance on Rex as overcautious. "Clear it, Vasquez," he ordered, his tone edged with impatience. "We've got a schedule. No time for ghost sense." Elena hesitated, her eyes on Rex, who refused to budge, whining softly. A signal she'd learned to trust over gut instinct. The chain of command was clear. Obey the NCO on sight, unless contradicted by direct superior order. But something in Rex's posture, the way his hackles rose, pulled at her. "Stand down, Sergeant," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Rex has a hit. We verify." Mills's face hardened. "That's not your call. Protocol says you report and clear on command. You're delaying the unit." Around them, other handlers paused, their dogs sensing the shift, leashes taut. The air thickened with unspoken tension, the distant thump of a helicopter rotor fading into the background. Elena straightened, her hand never leaving Rex's side. "With respect, Sergeant, protocol also mandates confirming a positive alert. Dismissing it risks the team." Mills stepped closer, his breath hot and laced with coffee. "You're insubordinate, Captain. Stand your team down or I'll log it." The words hung between them, a fracture in the rigid order of the morning. Eleanor's pulse quickened, but her face remained composed, the weight of her decision settling like the base's morning fog. In that moment, with witnesses lining the warehouse walls and radios open to the command post, Elena chose. She unclipped Rex's leash partially, allowing him to circle the crate fully. "Search," she commanded softly. The dog dove in, nose burrowing, and within seconds the crate's false panel gave way under his paws. Inside, nestled among training dummies, was a hidden compartment, not with explosives, but with classified documents marked eyes only, diplomatic attaché. Someone had planted them as a test, but the wrong one. Or perhaps not wrong at all. Mills's radio burst to life. "Control to all units. Stand down. Containment breach in Sector 3. Grant's voice followed, clipped and urgent. "Vasquez, report immediately. All personnel, secure the site." The handlers moved with practiced efficiency, but eyes turned to Elena, some with respect, others with doubt. Rex sat at her feet, tail thumping once, as if to say he'd known all along. By midday, the incident had escalated beyond a drill mishap. Whispers turned to formal inquiries. Eleanor stood in the briefing room, Rex at her side, as Grant reviewed the logs. "You defied a direct order," he said, his tone measured but firm. "That crate was part of a classified insertion exercise. You weren't cleared." Elena met his gaze. "Sir," Rex alerted, "protocol required verification." Grant's jaw tightened. "Protocol also requires chain of command. This goes up the ladder, Captain. Prepare for review." As the sun beat down on the base, casting harsh light on the unfolding scrutiny, Elena felt the first ripples of consequence. Her act of defiance, born of loyalty to her partner and her duty, had cracked the surface of institutional order. Little did she know it would draw eyes far beyond the base, eyes that could either bury her career or elevate it to unforeseen heights. The afternoon sun hung heavy over Joint Base Andrews, turning the asphalt into a shimmering haze that distorted the distant runways. Captain Elena Vasquez walked the perimeter of the K-9 kennels with Rex at her heel, the dog's paws padding softly against the gravel path. The air carried the sharp tang of disinfectant from the morning's cleaning routines, mingled with the earthy scent of wet fur from a recent hose-down. Elena's mind replayed the warehouse incident on a loop. Rex's alert, Sergeant Mills's order, the hidden compartment's reveal. She'd followed protocol in her view, but the command's response felt like a tightening noose. Inside the kennel block, a row of chain-link enclosures lined the concrete corridor, each holding a working dog in various states of rest. Handlers moved between them with measured steps, checking water bowls and logging vital signs on clipboards. Elena nodded to Specialist Torres, a young handler with a fresh shave and earnest eyes, who was brushing down his Belgian Malinois. "Afternoon, Captain," Torres said, his voice low, respectful. "Heard about Sector 3. Rex pull another miracle?" Elena kept her expression neutral, scratching Rex behind the ears as he leaned into her touch, just doing his job, Specialist, like the rest of us. But the words felt hollow. By now, the base grapevine had twisted the story. Insubordination during a classified drill, a captain overriding an NCO, documents exposed that shouldn't have been. Elena had seen the sidelong glances during lunch in the mess hall, the quick averting of eyes, the murmur of conversations that hushed when she approached. Her radio crackled to life as she exited the kennels, the static cutting through the hum of a passing Humvee. "Vasquez, report to the adjutant's office. Immediate." It was Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, the base's executive officer, his tone devoid of warmth. Elena clipped the mic. "On my way, sir." She glanced down at Rex, who tilted his head, sensing her shift. "Stay," she commanded softly, pointing to his mat in the handler's lounge. The dog complied without hesitation, his dark eyes following her until the door swung shut. The adjutant's office occupied a squat brick building near the command center. Its windows shuttered against the glare. Eleanor entered with a crisp salute, her boots echoing on the linoleum floor. Hayes sat behind a metal desk piled with folders, his uniform jacket draped over the chair back, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with muscle. Major Grant stood to one side, arms crossed, his face a study in controlled displeasure. A staff sergeant manned a stenotype machine in the corner, fingers poised over the keys. "At ease, Captain," Hayes said, gesturing to a chair opposite. Eleanor sat, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. The room smelled of stale coffee and ink, the wall clock ticking like a metronome. "We've reviewed the logs from this morning's exercise. Your actions in Sector 3 raise serious concerns." Elena met Hayes's gaze steadily. "Sir, Rex indicated a positive alert. Standard procedure requires verification before clearance." Grant interjected, his voice edged with gravel. "Procedure, Captain, flows through the chain. Sergeant Mills was the on-site lead. You questioned his authority in front of subordinates. That's not verification, that's disruption." The words landed like a reprimand in formation, precise and unyielding. Elena felt the heat rise in her chest, but kept her response measured. "With respect, Major, dismissing an alert without check endangers the unit. The documents confirmed Rex's read. They were concealed in a way that mimicked a threat." Hayes leaned forward, flipping open a red-tabbed folder. Those documents were part of a joint exercise with State Department oversight. Not your clearance level. Your interference compromised the simulation and exposed sensitive material prematurely. The stenographer's keys clicked softly, capturing every word. Elena's mind raced through the implications. A formal inquiry could mean suspension, reassignment, or worse. She'd built her career on Rex's reliability, deployments where his nose had sniffed out IEDs in the shadow of mountain passes, patrols where his growl had halted ambushes before they formed. Loyalty to him wasn't sentiment, it was survival, etched into every joint maneuver they'd run. Hayes continued, his tone procedural. "We've initiated an Article 15 investigation, non-judicial for now. You'll surrender your sidearm and restrict to base quarters until further notice. Rex remains in rotation under another handler." The last part hit hardest. Elena's hand twitched involuntarily, as if reaching for the empty holster at her hip. "Sir, Rex and I are a certified team. Separating us undermines discipline," Grant cut in. "The unit functions on trust in the chain, Captain, not in unilateral decisions." Hayes nodded, closing the folder with a snap. "Dismissed. Report any communications to this office." Eleanor rose, saluting sharply before turning on her heel. The door clicked shut behind her, and she paused in the corridor, the base's ambient noise filtering in, distant shouts from a PT session, the whine of a generator. Her reflection in a polished window showed a woman composed, but inside, doubt gnawed. Had she overstepped? Or had the system failed to adapt to what Rex had sensed? Back at the kennels, Rex greeted her with a muffled woof, tail sweeping the floor. Elena knelt, burying her face in his ruff, inhaling the familiar musk of fur and loyalty. "We're in it now, boy," she murmured. But as she stood, a runner from the command post approached, out of breath, envelope in hand. Captain Vasquez, sealed dispatch from the Pentagon, marked urgent. She broke the seal, scanning the contents under the fading light. It referenced the morning's find. The documents traced to a diplomatic courier chain with anomalies suggesting tampering. An addendum requested her presence for a briefing, not as a subject but as a witness. The signature line blurred slightly. Assistant Secretary of State. Eleanor folded the paper, pulse steadying. The ripples were spreading, pulling her deeper into a web that extended beyond the base's fences. That evening, as the floodlights bathed the tarmac in sodium glow, Eleanor walked Rex on a short leash. The night's chill settling in. Whispers among the handlers had evolved, some calling her reckless, others quietly admiring the stand. Sergeant Mills passed at a distance, his scowl unchanged, but he offered a curt nod. Small concessions in the machinery of command. In her quarters, a Spartan room with a single bunk and a wall of commendation plaques, Eleanor reviewed the dispatch again. The investigation loomed, but so did opportunity. Rex curled at her feet, his breathing even, a silent anchor. Outside, the base quieted, rotors of an incoming chopper slicing the air, a reminder that threats didn't wait for orders to align. Her choice that morning had ignited scrutiny, but it also illuminated cracks in the protocol she'd sworn to uphold. As sleep evaded her, Elena wondered if integrity demanded more than obedience, or if it would cost her everything. The first light of dawn filtered through the blinds of Captain Elena Vasquez's quarters, painting thin stripes across the concrete floor. She hadn't slept much, the dispatch from the Pentagon clutched in her hand like a talisman. Rex stirred at her feet, his nose nudging her boot, a quiet insistence that pulled her from the haze of fatigue. The base outside was awakening, distant calls of réveillé echoing from the parade ground, the low rumble of generators kicking in. Eleanor folded the paper once more, tucking it into her breast pocket. The request for her presence in D.C. wasn't an order, but it carried weight, anomalies in the diplomatic documents. Potential tampering linked to foreign actors. Her alert had uncovered it, yet the Article 15 loomed like a shadow over her career. She clipped Rex's leash and stepped into the cool morning air, the gravel crunching under their boots. The kennels were a short walk, but today it felt longer, each step measured against the uncertainty. Handlers were already at work, their voices carrying in clipped exchanges as they ran diagnostics on the dog's gear, harnesses checked for wear, vests zipped tight. Specialist Torres spotted her approaching and straightened from his task. "Morning, Captain." Rex looking sharp as ever. His tone held a note of solidarity, but Elena caught the flicker of concern in his eyes. "Morning, Specialist. Keep an eye on the rotations today." She unclipped the leash, watching Rex trot to his enclosure without a backward glance, his routine as ingrained as her own. Separation orders meant he'd work with a temporary handler for patrols, but Eleanor knew the bond's fragility. Dogs like Rex read their primary partner's cues, the subtle tension in a grip, the rhythm of breath during stress. Handing him off felt like fracturing a limb. By 0800, Elena reported to the motor pool for transport. A staff sergeant waited beside an unmarked black SUV, engine idling with a soft purr. "Pentagon escort, ma'am. Wheels up in 10. The drive to D.C. unfolded in silence, the highway flanked by Virginia's rolling hills, the scent of pine seeping through the vents. Elena's mind mapped the briefing. She'd recount the alert factually, emphasize protocol adherence, but doubt lingered. What if her defiance painted her as unreliable? The chain of command valued unity above individual instinct, even when that instinct saved lives. The Pentagon's corridors swallowed her upon arrival, a labyrinth of polished marble and humming fluorescence. An aide met her at security, badge clipped to his lapel, guiding her to a secure conference room on the third ring. The door hissed open to reveal a long oak table, flanked by men and women in crisp suits and uniforms. At the head sat Assistant Secretary Harlan Reid, his silver hair cropped short, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. Flanking him were two State Department analysts and a colonel from Joint Special Operations Command. No Major Grant. No base brass, just the weight of national security. "Captain Vasquez," Reid said, rising briefly to acknowledge her salute. "Have a seat. Coffee?" Elena declined, taking a chair at the table's end, her posture rigid. The room smelled of fresh printouts and machine oil from the projectors. A screen flickered to life, displaying grainy images of the warehouse crate. The hidden compartment circled in red. "Your report from Joint Base Andrews flagged this. Walk us through it." Elena spoke evenly, her voice cutting through the room's quiet hum. During the Sector 3 sweep, Sergeant Rex alerted on the crate. Standard verification protocol required a secondary check. Sergeant Mills ordered clearance, but the dog's signal was positive. Persistent whine, pawing. "I authorized the search to confirm." She paused as an analyst jotted notes, the pen scratching like radio static. The compartment held diplomatic pouches, marked for the U.S. Embassy in Riyadh. Anomalies included mismatched seals and residue traces, possibly Semtex residue, though inert. Reid leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "And your override of the NCO?" The question hung, probing for weakness. Eleanor met his gaze. "Sir, protocol prioritizes alert confirmation to mitigate risk. Dismissing it without cause could compromise the exercise and real operations." Murmurs rippled around the table. The colonel nodded slightly, but Reid's expression remained neutral. "Appreciated." These pouches were en route to a foreign minister's delegation. Tampering suggests an inside leak, possibly foreign intelligence probing our detection methods. The briefing stretched into hours. Diagrams unrolled across the table, timelines pinned to a board. Elena provided details on Rex's training. Scent discrimination drills in simulated heat, behavioral reads calibrated over 500 joint hours. But as the discussion turned to implications, tension coiled. "Your separation from the dog," the colonel interjected, "could impact ongoing sweeps. We've got heightened alerts on diplomatic channels." Elena's jaw tightened imperceptibly. "Sir, Rex and I are bonded for efficacy. Temporary handlers risk false negatives." Reid exchanged glances with the analysts before addressing her directly. "Captain, this isn't just a drill glitch. The Foreign Minister, His Excellency from the Gulf Alliance, has been briefed. He's requested K9 consultation for his next visit. Your team's profile fits." The words landed with quiet force. Elena processed it. Not court-martial fodder, but an asset. Yet the Article 15 back at base muddied the path. "Understood, sir, but my restriction handled," Reid cut in smoothly. "We'll expedite clearance. Report back to Andrews for prep. This elevates your role, Captain. Discretion is paramount." The meeting adjourned with handshakes, Eleanor's mind reeling as she exited into the corridor. The aide handed her a sealed folder, protocols for the minister's arrival, Rex's inclusion mandatory. Outside, the Potomac's gleam caught her eye through a window, a rare glimpse of normalcy amid the machinery. Back at base by late afternoon, the SUV pulled up to the command center under a sky bruised with clouds. Major Grant waited on the steps, his stance unreadable. "Captain, debrief?" Elena saluted, handing over the folder. "Pentagon cleared me, sir. Assignment tied to the incident." Grant's eyes narrowed as he scanned the top sheet. "The Foreign Minister? This changes the inquiry." But his tone held reservation, the institutional gears grinding against rapid shifts. Words spread like fog through the barracks by evening chow. Handlers clustered in the mess, trays clattering as they discussed the rumors. Vasquez pulled for high-level, Rex at the center. Sergeant Mills sat apart. Falk paused mid-air, his scowl deepening. Elena entered with Rex leashed, the dog's presence drawing nods of respect. Torres slid over a seat. "Heard your VIP now, ma'am. Rex saved the day again?" She sat, portioning kibble into Rex's bowl under the table. Team effort, specialist, protocol held, but inside, the moral weight pressed. Her stand had exposed a vulnerability in the chain, one now rippling to diplomatic levels. Loyalty to Rex had bridged duty and conscience, but at what cost to the unit's trust? As night fell, the base's floodlights hummed to life, casting long shadows over the tarmac. Elena walked Rex along the fence line, the chain link rattling softly in the breeze. The dispatch's promise hung in the air, a fragile reprieve. Yet she sensed the scrutiny intensifying, witnesses from the warehouse talking, logs reviewed under brighter lights. Her defiance wasn't buried, it was evolving, pulling allies and adversaries into the open. In the distance, a transport plane taxied, its engines a low roar, echoing the storm building within the ranks. Comment where you're watching from. I want to know how far stories of courage and integrity can reach. The fluorescent lights of the command center buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the rows of metal desks and flickering monitors. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at parade rest before Major Grant's office door, the weight of her service cap in her hand, the faint scent of printer ink and polished brass permeating the air. Rex waited outside in the handler's holding area, his enclosure just visible through the glass partition, where he paced with measured steps, ears flicking at every muffled voice. It was 600 hours, and the base stirred with the precision of a new day. Trucks rumbling to life in the motor pool, the sharp crack of salutes exchanged at shift change. Grant's door swung open, and he gestured her inside without preamble. The office was a fortress of order, maps pinned to walls, a half-empty coffee mug on the desk, the American flag standing sentinel in the corner. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes joined them, his presence adding gravity, uniform buttons gleaming under the light. "Captain," Grant began, his voice low and even, "the Pentagon's clearance buys time, but the Article 15 proceeds. Witnesses from the warehouse have given statements, Sergeant Mills included. Your actions are under full review." Elena nodded, her posture unyielding, though her mind catalogued the stakes. The foreign minister's request had paused the hammer, but not lifted it. "Understood, sir. I've prepared my formal response." She slid a folder across the desk, pages crisp with annotations on protocol sections 4-2 and 7-1, alert verification mandates, chain of command exceptions for imminent threats. Hayes scanned it briefly, his brow furrowing. This ties into the diplomatic angle. State confirms the tampering. Residue matches known foreign markers. But procedure demands accountability. The tribunal assembles tomorrow. 0900, hearing room Alpha. The words settled like dust after a convoy kick-up. A tribunal meant public scrutiny, peers, superiors, perhaps even JAG observers. Elena's career hung in the balance, not just her rank, but Rex's future assignments, the unit's trust. She'd chosen conscience over blind obedience, trusting the dog's read as an extension of her own training. Now that choice faced the institution's unblinking eye. By midday, the base's rhythm shifted subtly, as if the air itself anticipated the reckoning. Elena walked Rex through the training fields, the grass still damp from overnight dew, releasing a fresh green scent that mingled with the dog's warm fur. Handlers drilled in the distance, commands barked in rhythm, "Heel, sit, search!" But conversations hushed as she passed, eyes lingering on her insignia. Specialist Torres fell in step beside her, leash in hand for his own dog. "Ma'am, the word's out. Mills is pushing for full reprimand. Says you undermined the whole exercise." Elena kept her gaze forward, feeling the sun warm her shoulders through the uniform fabric. "Facts will speak, specialist. Focus on your rotations. Torres nodded, but his hesitation spoke volumes. The unit's loyalty fractured along lines of protocol versus instinct. Rex pulled gently at the leash, nose questing toward a cluster of low bushes, ever vigilant. Elena allowed the detour, watching him sniff methodically. In deployments, that nose had been her edge. Here, on home soil, it challenged the hierarchy. The afternoon brought the first wave of the public reckoning. A base-wide memo circulated via email and bulletin boards. All K9 unit personnel required to attend Captain Vasquez Tribunal Preview, 1600 hours, auditorium. Elena arrived early, Rex secured in the adjacent kennel, his whines filtering through the vents like a distant echo. The auditorium filled with 24 soldiers, handlers, NCOs, even a few from logistics, their boots scuffing the worn carpet, murmurs rising like radio static. Sergeant Mills sat in the front row, arms crossed, his jaw set in a line that spoke of unresolved grievance. Major Grant took the podium, the microphone humming to life. "This is a procedural review, not a spectacle. Captain Vasquez's actions in Sector 3 warrant examination for adherence to UCMJ Article 92, failure to obey order or regulation." He outlined the incident in clipped detail. The drill setup, Mills's command, Elena's override, the compartment's contents. Projections flickered on the screen, time-stamped logs, Rex's alert footage from body cams, the crate's innards exposed. Gasps rippled through the room as the diplomatic seals appeared, redacted but unmistakable. Elena stood at the side, summoned forward when her turn came. "Captain, explain your rationale," Grant prompted, his tone neutral but probing. She stepped to the mic, the wood cool under her palms, facing a sea of familiar faces, some supportive, others skeptical. "Sir, Sergeant Rex's alert was unambiguous. Persistent behavioral cues, aligned with threat protocols. Verification prevented potential exposure. Deferring to the chain without confirmation risked operational integrity." Her voice carried steady, each word measured, but she felt the weight of Mills's stare from the front. Mills rose at Grant's nod, his testimony delivered with the precision of a debrief. "Captain Vasquez directly countermanded my order, sir, in front of the team. It sowed doubt. Handlers hesitated on subsequent sweeps. Protocol exists for a reason, unity under fire." Nods echoed from several rows back, the room's atmosphere thickening like pre-storm humidity. Elena countered calmly, citing training manuals, but the divide was palpable. The institution's machinery grinding against her defense of loyalty over rigidity. As the preview adjourned, whispers erupted into open discussion in the corridors. A young private approached Elena outside, saluting awkwardly. "Ma'am, my dogs save patrols too. Hope they see it your way." But not all were kind. A cluster of NCOs near the water fountain muttered about lone wolves eroding discipline. Rex greeted her at the kennel door, pressing against her leg, his presence a quiet bulwark. She knelt, running fingers through his coat, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. "We face it together, boy." Evening fell with a chill wind sweeping the base, rattling the chain-link fences and carrying the distant whine of jets on final approach. In her quarters, Elena reviewed tribunal prep notes by desk lamp, the yellow light pooling on scattered papers. The foreign minister's request loomed as a wildcard. State had forwarded a formal endorsement, praising Rex's detection as instrumental to alliance security. Yet Grant's closing remark from the preview echoed, "Integrity serves the mission, Captain, but so does order." Sleep came fitfully, broken by dreams of leashes snapping under tension. Dawn would bring the full hearing, witnesses under oath, the chain of command laid bare. Elena's stand had ignited a fire, exposing not just a planted anomaly, but the moral fault lines within the ranks. As Rex curled nearby, his breathing a rhythmic anchor, She sensed the reckoning expanding. Allies emerged in quiet nods, adversaries in sharpened logs. The cost of her conscience was mounting, but so was the potential for reform, if the system bent rather than broke. Word of the tribunal spread beyond the base fences by morning radio chatter, drawing inquiries from higher echelons. Elena rose early, uniform pressed, resolve hardening like steel in a forge. The fight for justice wasn't won in silence. It demanded voice, even under scrutiny's glare. The hearing room in Building 47 hummed with restrained energy, its walls panelled in dark wood that absorbed the morning light slanting through high windows. Captain Elena Vasquez entered at precisely 0855 hours, her boots striking the linoleum with measured cadence, the faint echo mingling with the shuffle of chairs and the low murmur of assembled personnel. Rex was absent, confined to the kennels under standing orders, but his absence felt like a void at her side. A silent partner barred from the proceedings. The air carried the scent of fresh brewed coffee from a side table and the subtle polish of brass on uniforms, a reminder of the institution's unyielding formality. She took her place at the respondents' table, flanked by a JAG advocate, Lieutenant Patel, whose notes rustled softly as he arranged folders. Across the room, the tribunal panel convened. Major Grant as presiding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes, and a neutral major from the base's legal detachment. Sergeant Mills sat among the witnesses, his posture rigid, eyes fixed forward. 24 observers filled the benches, handlers from the K9 unit, a scattering of officers, even a civilian note-taker from the Public Affairs Office, their presence turning the inquiry into a public ledger of accountability. Radios were silenced, but the weight of open channels to command loomed, every word potentially cascading upward. Grant called the room to order with a gavel's sharp rap, the sound cutting through the hush like a rifle bolt. This tribunal convenes under UCMJ Article 15 to review Captain Elena Vasquez's actions during the Sector 3 exercise on date redacted. All statements will be factual, sworn, and relevant to chain of command adherence. He outlined the charges: failure to obey a lawful order, potential compromise of classified materials. Elena's pulse remained steady, her hands clasped on the table, but she felt the room's gaze like a perimeter scan, probing for weakness. The prosecution opened with Mills's testimony, the sergeant stepping to the stand with deliberate steps, saluting the panel before seating. "On the morning in question, sir, I issued a clearance order for the crate in Sector 3. Captain Vasquez refused, directing her K9 to breach it unilaterally. This occurred in view of multiple handlers, disrupting the exercise flow and exposing unsanctioned materials." His voice was even, professional, but edged with the conviction of a man defending protocol's sanctity. Grant nodded, prompting, "And the impact on unit cohesion?" Mills met Elena's eyes briefly. "It created hesitation, sir. Handlers second-guessed commands, wondering if instinct trumped orders. In the field that kills teams. Questions followed in rapid succession, timestamps verified, body cam footage replayed on a projector, the grainy image of Rex pawing the crate flickering across the wall. Elena watched, the footage a stark reminder, her hand on the leash, voice firm amid the warehouse's dim light. The note-taker's pen scratched relentlessly, capturing the fracture. Duty's rigid line versus the dog's unerring nose. Patel rose for cross-examination, his tone measured. "Sergeant, your Protocol 7-1 allows alert verification if imminent risk is indicated. Did Captain Vasquez cite this?" Mills shifted slightly. "She referenced it after, sir, but the override came first. Chain demands deference." The exchange unfolded like a drill debrief, precise and unemotional. Yet Elena sensed the undercurrent, loyalty to the system clashing with the quiet truth of Rex's save. Her turn came after the lunch recess, the room reconvening under a pall of afternoon humidity seeping through the vents. Elena approached the stand, oath administered with solemn gravity, her reflection steady in the polished rail. Grant leaned forward. "Captain, walk us through your decision-making." She spoke clearly, recounting the alert's cues. Rex's stiffened posture, the low whine calibrated from hundreds of hours in scent chambers, the pawing that mirrored IED drills in arid training yards. "Sir, verification wasn't defiance, it was adherence to threat mitigation. The compartment's contents, diplomatic seals with anomalies, validated the read. Protocol exists to protect the mission, not hinder it." Hayes interjected, his voice probing. "And the exposure. Those materials were state-cleared for simulation only." Elena paused, choosing words with care. "Unintended, sir, but necessary. Dismissing the alert risked real compromise if this were operational." The panel murmured, and Patel introduced exhibits. The Pentagon Dispatch, redacted endorsements praising Rex's detection in prior ops, and a fresh addendum from State, timeline analysis linking the tampering to a foreign probe during Gulf Alliance talks. The room stirred as the addendum was projected, its header stark. "Request for consultation, His Excellency, Foreign Minister Al-Sayed." Grant's brow furrowed. "This is new. Captain, your involvement?" Elena nodded. "Per Assistant Secretary Reed's directive, sir. The minister seeks K9 protocols for his delegation's security, citing the incident as pivotal." Whispers rippled, handlers exchanging glances, Mills's jaw tightening. The foreign minister's personal request, relayed through diplomatic channels, cast the morning's defiance in a new light, not recklessness, but prescience. Testimony continued with Specialist Torres, called as a neutral witness. He saluted crisply, his young face composed. "Ma'am, sir, Rex's alert was textbook. I've run joint drills. That dog doesn't false positive. Captain Vasquez followed the Bond's read, same as in theater." His words landed softly, a handler's quiet endorsement, evoking the unspoken trust forged in patrols where a dog's nose bridged human limits. Other witnesses followed. A logistics sergeant confirming no prior disruptions from Elena's team, a vet tech attesting to Rex's impeccable health logs. As the afternoon waned, the sun dipping low and casting elongated shadows across the benches, Grant recessed for deliberation. Elena returned to her seat, the wood creaking under her, the room's tension easing into anticipatory silence. Patel leaned in. "Strong case. Captain, the diplomatic angle shifts the narrative. Your integrity exposed a vulnerability, not created one." But doubt lingered. The chain of command prized order, and her stand had tested it publicly. Deliberation stretched into evening, the hearing room emptying as observers filed out, boots echoing down the corridor. Elena waited alone, the clock's tick marking time like a heartbeat monitor. Rex's whines from the distant kennels seemed to carry on the breeze through an open window, a reminder of the Bond under scrutiny. At 19:30, Grant reconvened the panel, his expression inscrutable. "Captain Vasquez, the tribunal finds insufficient grounds for full Article 15 proceedings. Your actions, while procedurally irregular, aligned with mission imperatives as validated by higher authority. Recommendation: formal counseling on chain deference with commendation for detection efficacy." Relief washed through her, tempered by the counseling sting, a notation in her file, a ripple in her record. Mills stood abruptly, saluting before exiting. His nod to Elena, curt but present. The observers' murmurs turned to nods of respect as they dispersed. The base's floodlights igniting outside like stars in formation. In the cooling night air, Elena retrieved Rex from the kennels, his tail sweeping arcs in the gravel as he pressed against her. The tribunal's verdict wasn't absolution. It was a pivot, her defiance forging a path to reform. Word of the foreign minister's request had permeated the ranks, sparking quiet discussions on protocol's flexibility, instinct as ally, not adversary. As they walked the perimeter, the chain-link fence humming in the wind, Elena felt the legacy stir. One captain's conscience, amplified by a dog's loyalty, nudging the institution toward quiet evolution. The cost had been scrutiny's glare, but the gain was clarity, duty and morality, intertwined in the ranks' unyielding march. The morning after the tribunal, a fine mist clung to the tarmac at Joint Base Andrews, muting the sharp edges of the hangars and turning the distant rotors of idling helicopters into blurred silhouettes. Captain Elena Vasquez moved through the K-9 unit's briefing tent with purposeful strides, her boots leaving faint impressions in the damp grass at the entrance. The air inside carried the mingled scents of canvas and machine oil, overlaid with the faint, comforting musk of the dogs settled in their crates along the far wall. Rex lay alert in his space, head lifted as she entered, his dark eyes locking onto hers with that unwavering focus that had carried them through sand-swept patrols, and now this institutional gauntlet. Major Grant stood at the head of the folding table, a stack of fresh orders before him. His uniform jacket buttoned to the collar despite the rising humidity. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes flanked him, reviewing a tablet screen with narrowed eyes. A half-dozen handlers filled the benches, Specialist Torres among them, his posture straight, but his glances toward Elena laced with quiet solidarity. Sergeant Mills was absent, reassigned to a perimeter detail, but his influence lingered in the room's subdued tension, like static on an open channel. "Attention!" Grant called, his voice cutting through the low hum of conversation. Chairs scraped as the group rose, salutes snapping in unison. "At ease! Today's brief centers on the diplomatic consultation. State has confirmed the foreign minister's arrival tomorrow, His Excellency Al-Sayed, and a delegation from the Gulf Alliance. Captain Vasquez, you'll lead the K-9 demonstration and advisory session. Rex is cleared for full participation." Elena's hand rested lightly on the table's edge, steadying the subtle surge of vindication. The tribunal's counseling note, a minor blemish in her file, faded against this assignment, proof that her stand had not only survived scrutiny, but propelled her forward. "Understood, sir. Protocols prepped?" Grant nodded, sliding a sealed packet across to her. "Full specs. Scent detection for diplomatic pouches, behavioral threat assessment. The minister's team has flagged concerns over insider tampering, post-incident. Your input on integration with their security detail." Hayes cleared his throat, his tone measured. "This isn't routine, Captain. The minister's request stems directly from your alert, Rex's efficacy highlighted in the briefing. But expectations are high. Any misstep reflects on the unit." The words carried the weight of the chain, a reminder that redemption came laced with responsibility. Elena met his gaze evenly. "We'll execute to standard, sir. Loyalty and precision." The brief unfolded with clipped efficiency, timelines pinned to a whiteboard, diagrams of the minister's motorcade route sketched in dry erase lines, rotations assigned for secondary handlers. Torres volunteered for backup, his voice steady. "Ma'am, my Malinois can shadow on flanks. We've run joint demos before." Eleanor acknowledged him with a nod, appreciating the gesture amid the lingering fractures. Whispers from the tribunal had rippled outward, some handlers viewing her as a cautionary tale of overreach, others as a quiet advocate for the dog's irreplaceable role. Rex's low whine from his crate punctuated the discussion, as if underscoring the bond that had ignited it all. By midday, the tent emptied, and Elena led Rex to the training paddock, a fenced expanse of packed earth bordered by chain link that rattled softly in the breeze. The mist had burned off, leaving the air thick with the scent of sun-warmed soil and the sharp tang of eucalyptus from nearby planters. She unclipped his leash, watching him circle the perimeter with fluid grace, nose questing low. "Work," she commanded softly, deploying a series of concealed scent stations, mock diplomatic seals laced with inert tracers, hidden in briefcases and under tarps. Rex moved methodically, tail rigid, pausing at each hit with a precise sit, his paws clean against the directives drilled into him over years of shared vigilance. Torres joined with his dog, the two teams running tandem sweeps, their movements syncing like a well-oiled patrol. "He's dialed in, Captain," Torres said, wiping sweat from his brow as they paused. "After the hearing, the folks are talking reform, maybe more leeway for alerts in Sims." Elena straightened, clipping a fresh marker to Rex's harness. "One step at a time, Specialist. The minister's visit could set precedent." But beneath her calm, vulnerability stirred. The counseling session loomed that afternoon, a formal sit-down with Grant to address chain deference. It was procedural, not punitive, yet it chafed like an ill-fitted vest, a reminder that integrity's cost echoed in quiet rooms. The counseling convened in Grant's office at 1400, the space unchanged from prior meetings, maps charting old campaigns, the flag's folds casting faint shadows. Elena sat opposite, Rex waiting outside under a handler's watch, his distant pant filtering through the door. Grant leaned back, hands steepled. "Captain, the tribunal cleared you, but the record stands. Your override exposed a gap. Protocol must bend for mission, not break under instinct." She nodded, her response concise. "Sir, Rex's red is protocol embodied. The incident proved it. Tampering uncovered, alliance secured." Grant's expression softened fractionally, a rare concession. "Noted. Focus this on the demo. Show the minister what our teams deliver. Discipline with edge." As the sun dipped toward evening, casting golden hues across the base, Elena prepped Rex in the kennels. The corridor's concrete gleamed from a fresh mop, water buckets sloshing as techs logged evening vitals. She ran a final behavioral check, noting his responses to stress cues, simulated crowd noise from a speaker, the flicker of strobe lights mimicking urban chaos. Rex held steady, his coat brushing her uniform as he leaned in, a silent affirmation. Outside, the base thrummed with anticipation. Extra patrols doubled, motor pool buzzing with polished vehicles for the delegation. Word of the visit had permeated the ranks, drawing sidelong respects in the mess hall, nods from NCOs who'd sat stone-faced at the tribunal, a quiet, "well done" from a logistics officer passing her tray. Even Mills, spotted at a distance during chow, offered no scowl, his focus on his plate a tacit truce. The public reckoning had forged uneasy bridges, her story evolving from defiance to asset in the unit's narrative. Night settled with a chorus of crickets beyond the barracks, the floodlights painting the tarmac in stark relief. Elena reviewed the demo script by bunklight. Rex curled at her feet, his warmth a counter to the chill seeping through the window. The foreign minister's arrival promised not just consultation, but consequence, her loyalty to Rex rippling into institutional quietus, where moral courage met diplomatic necessity. As sleep claimed her, fragmented dreams wove through, leashes taut in desert winds, orders clashing with whines, a minister's handshake under alliance banners. Dawn would bring the delegation, and with it, the chance to redefine the line between obedience and honor, one alert at a time. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Captain Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The first rays of dawn pierced the horizon over Joint Base Andrews, gilding the tarmac in pale gold and chasing away the night's chill. Captain Elena Vasquez stood outside the K-9 unit's staging area, her breath visible in the crisp air, the faint scent of dew-kissed asphalt rising around her. Rex sat at her side, harness adjusted with meticulous care, his coat brushed to a sheen that caught the light. The base hummed with subdued urgency, Humvees idling in the motor pool, their engines a low growl, security teams conducting final sweeps along the perimeter fence. Elena's hand rested on Rex's head, feeling the steady warmth beneath her palm, a ritual that grounded her amid the day's gravity. By 800, the delegation's aircraft touched down on the east runway, its wings slicing through the morning haze with a thunderous whine that echoed across the base. Elena watched from the observation deck, binoculars pressed to her eyes, as the Gulf Alliance jet taxied to a halt. Ground crew swarmed with practiced efficiency. Chocks placed and stairs extended, the air filling with the sharp tang of aviation fuel. Major Grant positioned himself at the welcome line, uniform impeccable, his stance a pillar of protocol. Lieutenant Colonel Hayes murmured final instructions into Elena's earpiece. "Keep it tight, Captain. Demo first, advisory after. The minister's security chief will shadow." Elena nodded, clipping Rex's lead as they descended to the tarmac. The delegation emerged in a measured procession, His Excellency Foreign Minister Al-Sayed at the fore, a tall figure in a tailored thobe edged with gold embroidery, flanked by aides and a detail of plainclothes protectors. Their faces were composed, but Eleanor noted the subtle scans, eyes darting to the hangars, hands hovering near concealed holsters. Al-Sayed's gaze settled on the K9 team, a flicker of recognition crossing his features from the briefings. "Captain Vasquez," he said in accented English, extending a hand after the formalities. His grip was firm, calloused from years in negotiation halls. "Your partner's instincts have already served our alliance. We are grateful." The group moved to the secure pavilion, a canvas enclosure erected overnight, its sides rippling gently in the breeze. Inside, the air was cooler, scented with fresh coffee from a side station and the faint ozone of projection equipment. Elena positioned Rex at the center of a marked grid, the floor taped into scent zones, simulating diplomatic transit. Briefcases lined with inert tracers, pouches mimicking embassy couriers, handlers from the minister's detail observed from folding chairs, notebooks open, their own working dogs leashed at their feet, coats a mix of Belgian shepherds and local breeds. "Commence," Grant ordered quietly, stepping back. Elena knelt beside Rex, her voice a low command. "Search." The dog moved with fluid precision, nose inches from the ground, tail a straight extension of focus. He circled the first station, pausing at a concealed pouch, sitting alert with a soft huff. Elena marked it verbally for the record. "Positive on Station 2, diplomatic seal anomaly." Al-Sayed leaned forward, his security chief translating murmurs into a tablet. Rex progressed methodically, hitting 3 more alerts in under 5 minutes. Each paw placement deliberate, his body language broadcasting certainty without excess. The minister's chief, a stern woman named Captain Noor, rose during the debrief, her uniform a blend of Gulf insignia and tactical vest. "Impressive calibration," she said, addressing Elena directly. "Our protocols emphasize human oversight. How do you integrate the animal's read without override?" Elena met her gaze steadily, the pavilion's canvas filtering the sun into diffused patterns on the table. "Training bonds the handler to the dog's cues, Captain. It's not override, it's synthesis. In the incident at Andrews, Rex's alert exposed tampering before human protocols could, residue traces that matched your concerns." Noor nodded, jotting notes, while Al-Sayed interjected, "This vulnerability we share. Insider threats erode trust. Your methods could reform our joint operations." The session extended into midday, diagrams unrolled across the table, timelines aligning US K9 standards with Alliance security. Elena detailed integration protocols, shared scent libraries for cross-border threats, handler exchanges to build mutual reads. Grant contributed sparingly, his input on chain of command adaptations drawing approving glances from Hayes. Whispers among the delegation evolved into commitments, pledges for a bilateral training exchange, Rex's profile forwarded as a model for hybrid teams. Torres, stationed at the perimeter with his Malinois, radioed periodic clears, his voice crackling. "All sectors green, ma'am." As the sun climbed higher, casting harsh shadows through the pavilion slits, Al-Sayed pulled Elena aside during a break. The air outside carried the warm earthiness of heated concrete, mingled with the distant bark of a patrol dog. "Captain, your tribunal reached my briefings," he said quietly, his tone carrying the weight of diplomacy. "A stand for conscience in rigid systems, rare and vital." It spared embarrassment in our talks. Elena saluted subtly, her response measured. "Duty demands it, Excellency. The dog taught me that." He smiled faintly, clasping her shoulder before rejoining the group. By afternoon, the agreement solidified. A memorandum for K9 protocol reforms, emphasizing alert verification flex within chains. Elena's incident cited as catalyst. Grant reviewed the draft with Hayes, his earlier reservations yielding to the tangible gains. Enhanced alliances, unit prestige elevated. Back in the briefing tent, handlers debriefed under the canvas flaps, the air thick with the scent of sweat and kibble bowls. Torres clapped Elena's shoulder lightly. "You did it, ma'am. Mills even asked about the exchange program." She glanced toward the kennels, where Rex awaited, his role now etched into institutional legacy. The delegation departed at dusk, the jet's engines roaring to life, leaving contrails streaking the violet sky. Eleanor walked Rex along the cooling tarmac, the gravel crunching underfoot, the base settling into evening routine, lights flickering on in barracks, the hum of generators a steady underscore. The counseling note in her file felt distant now, overshadowed by commendations incoming from State and JSOC. Whispers in the ranks had transformed. Her story, once a fracture, became a blueprint. Mentorship sessions planned for new handlers on Instinct's place in protocol, Rex a fixture in demo rotations. In the quiet of her quarters that night, Elena polished her insignia under the desk lamp, the metal reflecting flecks of light like stars in formation. Rex curled nearby, his breathing even, a testament to the loyalty that had bridged duty and morality. The foreign minister's request hadn't just cleared her name. It had ignited reform, ripples extending from one alert to fortified alliances, the system learning to yield without breaking. Captain Vasquez, once under scrutiny, stood as symbol. Moral strength forged in discipline's fire, her bond with Rex a quiet revolution within the ranks. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of They Tried to Court-Martial Her until the foreign minister personally requested her presence. See you in the next one. In the end, true legacy lies not in unbroken orders, but in the disciplined heart that mends them.